Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we've got another news and rumor review to discuss. In today's video, we've got a couple of signs to talk about, some more very interesting news updates, and we've got some trade rumors involving the Jackets, Wild, Penguins, and a couple of other teams. On to all the updates from the past couple of days, coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the End-to-End Hockey channel. Now before we get started, don't forget to like this video and subscribe below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do this without all of you guys, so if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below and don't forget to comment discussing today's video. And remember to stay tuned for more videos coming out in the very near future. So in today's video, we've got another news and rumor review to discuss as per usual. We'll start with a couple of signings that happened for our past couple of days. There were only 2 signings that happened over the past few days, so we'll touch on both these signings here. First was a contract extension in the Calgary Flames organization. As Pospisil, who's in the final year of a 2-year deal, AAV of $1 million, has done quite well as like a solid L6 power forward type guy, really hard to play against and sort of like a rough and tumble type forward. Gets a 3-year contract extension, AAV of $2.5 million. It's a pretty good deal for Pospisil. Pospisil 2 years ago played his first full season at the NHL level, putting up 8 goals and 24 points in 63 games, where last year had a little bit of a down year, putting up 4 goals and 25 points in 81 games, so wasn't as effective last year's year prior, but he's a solid guy who can play middle 6 minutes. He can be tough to play against. He's on the younger side of things. All in all, I think this is a pretty good deal for the Calgary Flames. I don't think it's overly bad, and I definitely think that the Flames get a really solid player here in Pospisil, and $2.5 million for a guy who can play third pair minutes and is tough to play against, that's not overly bad for the Calgary Flames. So very interesting out there, but Pospisil sends a 3-year extension in Calgary. And then one of the final arbitration cases has come to terms before arbitration, and that was in the Winnipeg Jets organization. Dylan Samberg, who we talked about in our last video, who swapped numbers with the Jets involving their arbitration. Samberg wanted 6, the Jets wanted $2.5 million. Well, they have come to terms on a new deal. Samberg gets a 3-year extension, AAV of $5.75 million. Not a bad deal there for the Jets. Like, I think this is definitely an overpayment. I think Samberg's like a $4 million, maybe a $4.5 million defenseman. I still think he's nowhere close to being a $6 million guy. So to pay him $5.75 million for the next 3 years is definitely a little bit of an overpayment in my opinion. But still, Samberg's been putting up some good numbers over the past couple of years. 2 years ago, had his first full stint in the NHL level, putting up 2 goals and 8 points in 63 games. 2 years ago, had 1 goal and 18 points in 78 games. And last year had a career high 6 goals and a career high 20 points in 60 games. So all in all, Samberg's been a pretty solid like second, third pair defenseman. Continues to climb up the depth chart. I could see him be a solid top 4 defenseman, and this deal will take him until he's a UFA. So very interesting out there. But Samberg, who is scheduled to be at arbitration in the last couple of days, has officially come to terms with the Winnipeg Jets, and they have avoided arbitration. So that's very good stuff there for the Jets. Those are the only 2 signings from our past couple of days. Next, going over to a couple of news updates. So first, we got a handful of things talking about when it comes to players signing overseas. First, Marcus Nutivaara, the former NHL player, Columbus Blue Jacket, Florida Panther defenseman, has signed in Liga. So very interesting note there, but Nutivaara will remain overseas after a couple of years off due to injury problems. So very interesting note there. Jake Virtanen, the former first-round pick of the Vancouver Canucks, has signed in Slovakia. So Virtanen will remain overseas as he's been away from the NHL from the past couple of seasons. Andre Pavel, who was a RFA acquired in season by the Nashville Predators from Colorado, and I think the Juuso Parssinen deal, has officially signed overseas. He's signed with Liga. So Pavel, who wasn't really getting much of an opportunity at the NHL level, has signed overseas. And Jimmy Vesey, the solid bomb 6 forward, spent the past couple of years in New York. He's also had stints in Colorado, Buffalo, Toronto, Vancouver, lots of different teams he's played with, is apparently receiving interest from the KHL. So there's a very likely chance we could see the solid bomb 6 forward Jimmy Vesey, who at this point in time has not been signed to an NHL contract, signed over in the KHL. So very interesting note there. Well, Jacob Zaboro, the former first-round pick of the Boston Bruins organization, who was traded to Columbus, has actually terminated his contract in Czechia, and there's some out there who think that he could be looking for an NHL return. So we'll have to wait and see on that. No guarantees that Zboril will get an NHL opportunity, but I could see him if he does really want to go back to the NHL, get to like a PTO or something, and maybe get an opportunity to get back into the NHL. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But Pavel, Virtanen, Nutivaara have all signed overseas. Vesey is receiving interest from the KHL, and Zaboro has terminated his contract in Czechia. So very interesting out there. The one other thing I want to touch on here today is Charlie McAvoy. According to a couple of recent reports, McAvoy, who was out of the NHL lineup since February due to a shoulder injury, is apparently good to go after being out. So McAvoy missed the final 3 months of the regular season for the Boston Bruins due to that injury. Really hampered the Boston Bruins season towards the end of the regular season. Does seem to be good to go. That's going to be a huge boost there for Boston to get their best defenseman and potentially arguably their best player back in the lineup too. So that's very good news. So expect Charlie McAvoy to be ready for training camp come September when the training camps open. So very interesting note there. But those are the overseas updates involving Nutivaara, Vesey, Zboril, Virtanen, and Pavel. And it seems like McAvoy will be good to go for training camps. Very interesting note there. And lastly, going over to a couple of trade updates. So we just have a few trade updates here to talk about, not a whole bunch of things here. So first, on the Cam and Strick podcast, they recently had Matt Martin on their podcast. That Martin revealed that he got either an email or a text or something like that from Bo Horvat in the midst of all of those rumors that Bo Horvat was potentially getting dealt, saying that he did not want to be moved. So it seems like even though there was a lot of talk out there that teams had some interest in Horvat, we heard about Philadelphia, we heard about Vancouver, and there were a couple of other teams who were in desperate need of a second line center who really wanted Bo Horvat, and with the direction the New York Islanders were heading after moving Noah Dobson, a lot of teams thought they could potentially sell off even more pieces and potentially move off Bo Horvat. Well, apparently Horvat didn't want to be moved, and it seems like he likes his time on Long Island and really wants to stay. I think he even has trade protection, so he would probably have to okay a deal. So very interesting note there. It's not something that's overly important at this point in time because I don't think the Islanders are going to make any more blockbuster moves. But it's very interesting note there that even though there was a lot of talk earlier in the season about Bo Horvat potentially being dealt by the New York Islanders, it never happened, and Horvat not wanting to move might be one of the reasons why. So very interesting note there. But apparently, according to Matt Martin on the Cam and Strick podcast, Horvat never really wanted to move out of the Islanders organization. So very interesting note there. Next, going over to an Athletic article by Joe Smith and Michael Russo, as well as Frank Seravalli. They have both mentioned that the Wild and Marco Rossi have gone months without discussing a new contract. Apparently, according to Joe Smith and Michael Russo, the Wild and Rossi haven't had discussions involving about a contract since June. So that is very interesting out there. And Frank Seravalli says that the Wild are probably waiting to try and see if they could call Rossi's bluff and someone would offer sheet him, which it doesn't seem like it's going to happen at this point in time. And it seems like at this point in time, what I got the sense of from both sides is that sounds like when training camp starts to come around, so probably late August, early September, the two sides will hook up again, because at this point in time, an offer sheet does not seem likely. Like all the insiders at this point in time are saying that an offer sheet seems very unlikely for Marco Rossi. And on top of that, I've also seen some people say that a trade at this point even seems really unlikely. So it seems like at this point in time, Rossi and the Wild may have to come together on some sort of a signing. Like at this point, I think what might be best for the two sides is be like a 2 to 3 year bridge deal at like $5 to $6 million. Now the problem with that is Rossi doesn't want to sign a short-term deal because he feels like he could be at risk of being placed lower in the lineup like it was in the playoffs, and then he won't get the opportunities he could to try and up his value. So it'll be very interesting to know there what happened with the Rossi situation, but the fact that they haven't had contract negotiations since June is very telling. So I don't know if this relationship can be mended. It might not be able to, but it just seems that there's not really a whole bunch of interest in Marco Rossi right now, especially with the ask he wants on a new contract. So we shall wait and see. Keep your eye on Marco Rossi. But the Wild and Rossi haven't had contract negotiations since June, so very interesting note there. Next, going over to James Nichols. I think from the Hockey News, they were talking recently about a couple of trade destinations Igor Chinakov could go to, and they said that the New Jersey Devils and Buffalo Sabres could be potential landing spots. So I don't think there's any real linkage to those two teams. I think these are just speculations as to what would be good fits for Igor Chinakov. We talked about this recently, that Igor Chinakov has asked for a trade trade and wants to be dealt by the Columbus Blue Jackets. Chinakov is a solid Russian player. He's, I think, 22, 23 years old. Really solid middle sticks guy. Can put up, I think his ceiling's like a 50 to 60 point player. Can probably put up like 20 goals. So he's no slouch, I don't think. And I think he's going to be a really solid player at the NHL level. So it'll be very interesting to note there. Chinakov, I think, would be a really good piece for Columbus. But if he really does want to stay in Columbus, Jersey, Buffalo, I could see the fits there. Buffalo's looking for some more forward help. They haven't really done much this offseason besides moving off a guy like JJ Peterka. So adding a younger guy who can help in their top nine like Chinakov would be a smart move there from Buffalo. Also, New Jersey, they've been really looking to add another top nine forward. Chinakov, I think, would really complement that top nine really well, playing on like the second or third line. So I can definitely see why these two teams would be very likely landing spots for Chinakov. I'm not exactly sure what the Jackets would want for Chinakov right now. I'm not sure if he would be packaged in a bigger deal for a massive upgrade, or if they were to just move him, what would they want? Like, would they want a roster player back, second round pick, solid process? But I'm not exactly sure, but I can see the potentialities of New Jersey or Buffalo being solid landing spots for Chinakov. So we'll have to wait and see on that, but keep your eye on the Devils and the Sabres as potential landing spots for Chinakov. And lastly, going over to the Erik Karlsson situation. Shanna Goldman, I think of The Athletic, was recently talking about Erik Karlsson, and he says that it's very interesting, and it sounds like the trade options for Erik Karlsson are dwindling. There was, at some point, he said as much as 8 teams who had significant interest in Erik Karlsson, but after all this offseason moves, he says that that number is dwindling down. He says Florida probably would have had some interest if they didn't keep Aaron Ekblad, but they kept Aaron Ekblad and they're over the cap right now, so they probably don't have any interest right now. He says Carolina was always a likely landing spot, could still potentially be a landing spot if enough salary was retained, but they already traded for K'Andre Miller. Like, do they really need Erik Karlsson at this point in time? You could definitely debate that. Another team is Ottawa, his old stomping grounds. Some people have said he could go back to the Ottawa Senators organization, but they just acquired Jordan Spence, who can be a solid second, third pair defenseman. So I think, according to a couple of recent reports, they're probably going to want to see how Spence does before they make any other trades on the blue line. So that sort of rules out Ottawa for Erik Karlsson. So there were a couple of really solid landing spots for Erik Karlsson, but it sounds like those are really all going away. Like, I could still see Carolina to some extent. Detroit's a team who comes to mind. Dallas, I think, is another team. But besides those three, maybe there's one or two other ones. There's not really a whole bunch of major interest in Karlsson, especially as $10 million cap hit. So we will have to wait and see what happens there. But according to Shanna Goldman, the options for Erik Karlsson being dealt are dwindling and could very likely be very low on the spectrum. So very interesting note there. So we're going to have to wait and see on that. But those are all the trade updates from the past couple of days. What was your opinion on all of this? Who do you think could potentially still try and land Erik Karlsson? Could Chinakov go to New Jersey or Buffalo? What happens in the Marco Rossi situation? And are you surprised that Horvat did not want to be moved by the Islanders? Definitely your thoughts on all of that, plus the news updates and the signings from our past couple of days. That's all I'm going to talk for today. Remember to like this video, and if you're liking, subscribe below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do this without all of you guys, so if you haven't already, don't forget the subscribe button down below. Don't forget to comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Also a blog to about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that, so check that out. I'll link that down in the description below. Can't wait to see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.